This is a forgery. For the real thing, come to the Abraham Lincoln Bookshop in Chicago.
Locke and
Yeah.
Tocqueville, very heady area to be in. And it seems that, in a way, perhaps so were his contemporaries. Behind me, Leonard Volk, who made the first life mask, the one without the beard. There was no death mask, by the way, ever. Just two life masks. Clark Mills, in beginning of 1865, was the bearded one. Volk made one without, and he was really producing it for busts that he wanted to make. And here is the draped or Romanesque bust that really places him in an ancient time. What was it, do you think, that why would Volk do that? How did Americans want their leaders to look Republican in the old term of the Greeks and Romans?
Sure. Dan, I wanted to say one thing about this. I was immediately struck by this bust when I walked into your store, and I've seen a lot of busts of Lincoln, and I have to say this I've just been mesmerized
It's a great
by
book.
this, and it's, of course,
You
it's,
don't
as
see
you
it very
mentioned,
often.
it's based on Volk did it. It's based on the mask
Yes.
that was made. The detail is stunning. The expression on Lincoln's face. And so, what is it about this? I mean, you can see this is done in 1860.
No, this is
It's-
done in 66 after the
Oh, this was done in
assassination.
1866.
Yeah, this was done later.
Okay.
He did three different types, and the bust, which is a smaller bust that he started to produce. But then he did a Hermes type, which is a different type of bust, smaller, and then the classic Romanesque or draped.
Well, if we look at Lincoln's political vision, and I identify, again, wisdom as a kind of vision, it draws, as I see, from three important traditions. I call them the three R's. The tradition of reason, one can think of Euclid and axioms, definitions of free society that Lincoln spoke of, unassisted human reason, revelation, Lincoln's reliance upon the Bible. The Bible is a common moral frame of reference at the time. In this other tradition, republicanism. And by that we mean the tradition of self-governance going back to Greek and Rome. And we see the continuity here reflected, the self-understanding of America as a republican regime reflected in the art here. You know, Lincoln as a Roman statesman, right, garbed in a toga.
Certainly European in feel, not really American in a way, but here they
Sure.
are. They're imbued with this.
Sure, one thinks of the Federalist Papers, right, that great statement of American political thought, and the pen name by Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and James Madison was Publius, a Roman statesman who strengthened the republic after the fall of the kingship at that time.
Now you break down your book into 6 component parts. Wisdom, which is theoretical
Yes.
wisdom. Prudence, which is practical wisdom. Duty, magnanimity, rhetoric, and patriotism, each interlocking as well.
Good, yeah, well done. Yeah.
But at the same time, these are the components that you're looking at. Let's take just for in one of the chapters here, magnanimity. William Tecumseh Sherman said that, as you write, that Lincoln combined greatness with goodness. How did magnanimity express itself within Lincoln as a component of statesmanship?
Yeah, magnanimity is, again, a term that goes back to the ancient Greeks. It means greatness of soul. And magnanimity, as you know, relating to one of the earlier questions here, involves great ambition, okay, and great striving to do great things, but to be worthy of recognition, to be worthy of it. And to me, magnanimity is probably the defining character trait of a statesman and of Lincoln as a statesman. This greatness of soul. But here it involves a conjunction of goodness and greatness. One can think of certainly, again, Julius Caesar or Alexander the Great or Napoleon, Alexander the Great. as being great in the sense that they were influential, but not great in the sense that they possess this kind of magnanimity. I think Aquinas does a great service, and including Christian norms as part of magnanimity, both humility and charity. So greatness of soul, this great striving, this great ambition, also involves charity, a sacrificial service for others for the sake of the common good, and love of one's neighbor that's applied politically. So, Lincoln's greatness, I think, is best understood in these terms, that there were moral boundaries to his ambition, that his greatness was not simply self-serving, that it was wedded with goodness, that it included a humility that protected him from overreaching. One can think of tremendously gifted leaders who lack a Socratic self-knowledge, who lack a humility in terms of their own limitations, and therefore this undermines really the good that they can achieve.
Richard Cowardine, in his book Lincoln: Life of Purpose and Power,
Great book,
a wonderful book,
great
won
book.
the Lincoln Prize too,
And a wonderful person.
He's a terrific guy. But he writes that the sources of power. He writes of the three specific sources of power that Lincoln had. His inner self is certainly part of it, the machinery of party, and also religion and religiosity. Does this fit into the political statesman that Lincoln was? How do these fit into your idea of him as a statesman?
Yeah, I think it does. I had mentioned that Lincoln's vision, the norms that he turned to rule and measure political life, to judge slavery. When he invoked the laws of nature and nature's God in the Declaration of Independence, when he invoked the Bible, when he invoked Genesis 3:19, you shall not eat bread. You shall not eat bread without toil, the sweat of thy brow. Here Lincoln was relying upon the Bible, and that involves religion as a very powerful force in his vision. And of course, when we talk about himself, that we're talking about his own virtue, his character, and how his character is formed. Magnanimity is a virtue of character, so it fits in. I think it provides a philosophical articulation of what it means to be self-developed, or to rely upon oneself, one's character, but also in view of, again, higher standards and an honorable ambition that doesn't see itself as the measure of reality. We had mentioned religion, we had mentioned party. Of course, is Pericles said that a great statesman must know what is to be done, but also how to explain it. And so Lincoln's role in party was crucial in articulating a vision to the wider public.
And also they out there doing work for him.
That's right.
As part of that. I'm going to get into a left field here for a moment, because
Sure.
you said something very briefly about loving your neighbor. And I have to admit that I find it hard to love my neighbor. I find it easy to tolerate my neighbor. And I'm not sure human nature can really love everyone. Hard to love one person, two people. What do you think about that? I mean, to me, if they were saying, tolerate your neighbor, I think that is something that maybe can be done in human nature. There's a thought outside your book.
No, that's certainly an objection that's often made. And let's be clear, Lincoln was no flabby-minded utopian. He's not what you would call an idealist or a sentimentalist. Lincoln very often said that slavery is found in the selfishness of man's nature. So Lincoln had a clear appreciation of the imperfectibility, even the depravity of man, and his understanding of equality was informed by both the depravity of human nature as well as its dignity. At the same time, one need not in terms of one's neighbor, loving them is wanting the best for them, and seeking not to harm them, seeking not to do something in malice, and even putting the common good before your own self-interest. And I think that's charitable, that's sacrificial service at times.
Now, if Lincoln feels that human nature is not going to change, how did he put that into action with policy?
Sure. Well, you have the self-evident truths of the Declaration of Independence were Lincoln's guidepost, right? That was his moral compass. Mm-hmm. These were not self-evident suggestions. These were not relative to white Anglo-Saxon males in the mid 18th century. These were universal, timeless truths, and they were norms or standards that guided his policy, even when they could not be fully realized. And Lincoln recognized that's where the second element of his statesmanship is important: prudence, practical wisdom. What is politically desirable in the abstract is not always possible. In fact, in trying to make the desirable always the possible following that which is always desirable, you could actually undermine the very good that you seek to attain.
Now, was he just plainly intuitive? I think of Shakespeare, that we always ask, how did Shakespeare didn't have access to libraries and this and that? How did he write all this? How did he know all this? What did Lincoln read? Did he read Aristotle or Aquinas? How much did he read of the ancients? And how much of it was intuitive as the genius of it?
I think without question, there's great native genius here. And at the same time, Lincoln turned to Shakespeare, he turned to the Bible, turned to these are great sources. He turned to Plutarch, who has quite a bit to say about statesmanship. He didn't read Aristotle or Aquinas, as far as I know, and I mentioned that in the book. But I don't think one has to, prove that you read Aristotle and Aquinas to act in accordance with the vision of human life that they describe. If they're great thinkers, if they truly are great thinkers.